Along First South in downtown Salt Lake City might look like a commercial area behind me, but it was once a bustling hub for Utah's Japanese Americans. Now that group fighting to keep this street as is as Salt Lake reimagines downtown. I've got the full story straight ahead.
Well, a little-known street in downtown Salt Lake City is in the heart of what could become a new revitalized downtown and hockey stadium.
Yeah, and the Japanese American community is nervous that some of their historic buildings could actually be in jeopardy here. News specialist Lindsay Aerts joining us live right now. And Lindsay, a lot of people may not know where and what is Japantown.
Well, it looks like, Lindsay, we're having some issues there, but along 100 South between 2nd and 3rd West is where Japantown is. It doesn't look like much today, but it's home to this 100-year-old church, a Buddhist temple, also a community garden that the Japanese American community is working to protect. This street has a very storied history for the community. It wasn't long after World War II when this area was a bustling refuge for the Japanese facing incarceration in other parts of the county. Now, then just a few decades later, in the 60s, Utah's government came in and took this land, tearing down Japantown. Ironically, it was for a failed Olympic stadium that was built where the Salt Palace is now. Salt Lake City Council member Darian Mano says that the wounds are still fresh for people who remember that, and especially as Salt Lake explores another sports district. Today, the City Council got an update on an existing plan to revitalize Japantown. Mano says that as those stadium plans come forward, it's a deal breaker for him to protect this street.
If we can fold Japantown into this vision of a better downtown and a sports entertainment district, and all three of those things can happen simultaneously, I'm very open to however we need to fund that. Those are huge goals that I would support, but it's how we balance those three goals.
And coming up in our 6:30 newscast, we're going to introduce you to another member of the community and what the 100-year-old Japanese Church of Christ means to her and her family who frequented this area decades ago. Again, Lindsay Aerts is going to have more on that coming up at 6:30.
Well, Governor Cox has been spending the last couple of days Saturday.
So to come, concerns about the future of historic buildings in downtown Salt Lake City, what a revitalization plan means for Utah's Japanese American community.
Plus, Chick-fil-A testing the...
Sites are set on revitalizing downtown Salt Lake with a potential NHL arena possibly in the works here.
But those plans are fueling fears over the fate of a historic street. Members of the Japanese American community are now voicing their concerns about the future of Japantown. News specialist Lindsay Aerts has the details on what's at stake.
It was once a bustling area for Japanese Americans, this garden representing a sanctuary on this historic street along First South. Now it butts up against a loading dock for the Salt Palace, and this street at the heart of conversations of revitalizing downtown.
Restaurants and community centers and pool halls and dry cleaning, a whole community.
That is how Janie Iwamoto remembers the history of 100 South between 2nd and 3rd West in downtown, known as Japantown.
Our churches, there's a Salt Lake Buddhist temple over there and the Japanese Church of Christ here, and they've been here over 100 years.
An unassuming street today with a rich history she doesn't want forgotten.
It was decimated in the late 60s.
Once a bustling home to refugee Japanese Americans after World War II, just a few decades later, Utah's government took this land, tearing down Japantown. Ironically, it was for a failed Olympic bid and a stadium that stood until 1994, where the Salt Palace is now. The wounds still fresh for people who still remember their land being taken, and especially as Salt Lake explores another sports district.
We will stay here. We're not planning to move, and we act as a community together.
Earlier today, the Salt Lake City Council got an update on a plan that's existed for years to rebuild Japantown.
That is something that the city could theoretically do, but I'm hopeful that we have a bigger conversation of what's the future of Japantown.
Councilmember Darian Mano says he shares Iwamoto's goal of preserving the street. In fact, he says if plans to revitalize downtown don't include that, that's a deal breaker for him.
If we can fold Japantown into this vision of a better downtown and a sports entertainment district, and all three of those things can happen simultaneously. I'm very open to however we need to fund that.
Mono says there's no indication Japantown would be torn down again, but Iwamoto says her community wants a seat at the table.
The community is really worried, and even though things aren't set in stone, it's all fluid right now, the community needs to hear that.
Depending on the way that this happens, I could look back and this could be the most meaningful and significant thing I've ever worked on, or the most devastating. So it's big. It's a big deal.
As the plans continue to evolve for what happens in downtown Salt Lake City, this plaque behind me has the name of Utah Japanese American World War II soldiers, their descendants, now hoping that things on this street don't change. Reporting in Salt Lake City along First South for KSL-5 News, I'm Lindsay Ertz.
All right, Lindsay, thank you for that.
Kevin, it was just irresistible. All right, Kevin, thanks. It sounds good. Sights are set on revitalizing downtown Salt Lake with a huge NHL arena in the works.
Yeah, but those plans are fueling some concern over the fate of an historic street.
Our churches, there's a Salt Lake Buddhist temple over there and the Japanese Church of Christ here, and they've been here over 100 years.
Japanese American community is nervous that some of their historic buildings could be in jeopardy. We're talking about the so-called Japantown that sits along 100 South between 2nd and 3rd West. Well, today's Salt Lake City Council got an update on an existing plan to revitalize the area. And one city council member is vowing to protect the street. Darren Mono tells us that it will be a deal breaker for him if plans for a potential sports district do not include preserving Japantown.
New at 10.